It's
Okay,
streaming.
we'll give it a little bit. Um, did you tag me?
To tag you. It don't need to tag you.
Yep. No. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It'll
But it did.
automatically. There we
Oh,
go.
it doesn't pop up to me. It didn't pop up to me this time.
Right, right. It's live that we're live now though.
Yeah, I see it. Did it show to you?
Yep, I'm live.
But did you get a notification? Yeah. Well, there's me at least. Click to expand. There we go.
All right, I'm gonna send this out to people real quick. Let's
Oh, I gotta mute that. All right, so I can. Mike Freeze in the house.
I'm live with the great Moussa.
The best Halo player in Russia. That's what you gotta say, man. I need an intro. I need an intro, man. The best
You got
Halo
drums, don't
player.
you? Just play your drums.
You gotta do. That'll be the next intro, man. I'll get the big drum.
We can make a whole intro.
We'll do a Lebanese intro. I don't even know what kind of intro to do for you, man. Be like a gay one or something, So make it happen, Captain. All right, we got like 6 people, man. All right. So the talk of the day today is all about communication, right?
Communication or errors in communication.
I mean, that's really all there is, isn't it?
I think that's everything. Like humanity could just be described as like the lack of being able to communicate properly. I mean, you got the Tower of Babel in the Bible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's unbelievable, man. The more you grow, the more fights you get into, the more arguments you get into, the more you realize, like, man, how can I, stop getting in fights with people? How do I not, how do I argue less with people? How do I get along with you just want to get along with people a little bit better. But once you start understanding that it's more of the communication that's not happening right, then you start understanding that, what can I do? I mean, that's how people start getting along, is when they start understanding, how do I fix myself? At least it is to me, is I have to look towards me before I can fix anything, because more than likely, like, a lot of, you one of the two people have to realize that there's a communication barrier between the two.
Yeah.
And if both don't realize that, that's when stubbornness happens. Nobody gets along. I mean, how many times did we get into stupid arguments, and how many times did we stop, look back towards each other, and whether it's you or me, we come back and say, hey, and we re-explain what we're trying to say in a different way. And it's all everything from facial expressions, from the way you say things, from the wordings, and really most of the communication, the miscommunications happened when there are through text, through Facebook
Because
messages.
it lacks the emotional context and
Yeah,
the subtle body language.
I mean, it's huge. It's huge. That's why you have to be in court when you're going through trial. That's why the CIA, they interrogate you like in person. Facial expression is a huge, huge deal,
Have you
and
had the
so
CIA
all the time,
interrogate you? How do you know about this?
they live. Dude, I'm Lebanese, man. That's
Uh,
that's all they do. But no, man. I mean, it's such a big deal, man. It's to be able to step back and realize that there's something wrong between how I'm relating words to the other person, that the other person is getting mad. And this happens to me at least 90% through text. If I'm messing around with a friend and I send them a text message, I sometimes, even through Facebook, I realize my communication through Facebook is probably the worst,
right.
because I'd be feeling something, and then I would read it, and then I realize, like, a day later, when I would read what I wrote, especially if it's a long paragraph, and especially if nobody replies, I'll come back and say, what what the hell did I say? And I'll reread it. I'm like, man, that came out pretty harsh, and they're probably
Right.
pissed. And then I find out later that they were pissed. But then when I was writing it, I was cool. I mean, I was fine. I was calm. I was reading it, But then you get this where people think like, oh man, I mean, you have no idea how many family I have that think I'm just angry at the world, because I'm posting this stuff. But in reality, I'm chilling, sharing information and sharing what I believe in this and that, or communicating with people in my way. But it's also on me to realize that I'm not quite communicating it right. You know what I mean?
I think you can
So,
only meet people halfway, right? Like, like
yeah,
I'm a firm believer that everyone has their own definition for each individual word. We all recognize words. Sure, we can communicate on the day to day. Oh, this word means this and that. But I think that we all have a little bit of a little different understanding of each individual word. And when people talk, they don't realize, especially when you're talking about politics or religion or any taboo subject, that the words that we're using, we might not have the same exact definition in our head. And because of that, there's just constant little errors happening. Right. Right. And like, so like you, it is such a major hang up to be able to clearly and accurately communicate your ideas, especially when you're talking about very emotionally uh, explosive subjects, right? And it like you said, if people don't recognize the subtle nuances and the errors in their communication, it's hard to talk about religion or whatever, and you will butt heads, and you'll go around in circles because you won't be able to get to the bare bones of like the actual concepts and ideas that you're talking about.
yeah. I mean, that's the toughest part. Is, I mean, that's why it's a taboo talk show. It's things that we people don't feel comfortable talking about, or they avoid talking about it because they know they will butt heads with each other because of it. And it's so difficult because obviously, like, if you mentioned religion, if you're born a Muslim or if you're born a Christian, now you came from different cultures, different books that you've read, different belief systems, just a different lifestyle period, and you're trying to now explain that to this other person. Now, obviously one of them wants the other one to understand his views, the other one wants that side to understand their views, and that's why it's so hard and so rare where you would see, like, a Christian convert to Muslim or Muslim convert to Christian, because it's so hard to find two people that are willing to step back and realize that they're just not able to communicate that very well. With they need to step back and say, okay, how can I have them understand? And once you start realizing that, if you just switch the way you're communicating to people, if you just switch that up a little bit and realize that, hey, if I can listen, maybe they will understand me. And once you do this, now they're gonna want to listen as well, because you've allowed them to listen. And it goes back and forth, and then you open that door up to be more comfortable to talk about deeper things. And then that's when understanding starts happening. You know what I mean? When you to me, at least, when I make myself vulnerable, when I open up the doors and say, hey, I don't know if this is right. And once you start saying things like this, people are like, oh man, so he's not saying he's right, he's opening himself to be wrong. Then they're willing to say, hey, I could be wrong
Hopefully,
as well.
yeah.
What?
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully,
I mean, it is at least to my experience, like, that's when I talk to people. The best way for me to get them to understand a point is you gotta honestly, truly want to believe their point as well. I mean, whether you can't stand it or not. I mean, it's nothing hidden to me. Like, I'm very much against vaccination, but there's a lot of my friends and good friends that are for vaccination. So whenever they message me, they try to avoid Facebook, which is good. But whenever they message me on the side and talk to me about that, we I start to understand how they're feeling about this, because if I don't allow myself to listen to their point of view, and not everybody's point of view is different. You can be I've met so many different people that are pro-vax that are just not, they're looking at it from so many different ways, and once they explain that to me, I'm like, oh, that's what you're worried about. And this person's like, oh, okay, so this is your history, and this is what you're worried about. And so you need to open yourself up and make yourself vulnerable to listen to people before you can come out and say your point. I'm not gonna come and convince anybody that, obviously, like, vaccines are not good if I'm not, willing to listen to their point. So that's the hard part about communication, is letting yourself just step back, allowing yourself to step back and say, hey, I could be, wrong too. And don't tell the person, oh, okay, like, these are just like details about communications, for example. But like, you can't just, as soon as they say something to you about what their beliefs are, no matter what it is, I'm just giving vaccination as an example, but whatever it is, you can't, um, you know let them talk, or right after they say something, come back and attack and say, oh, but this is, because now you're showing that you don't care about what they believe in, you don't care about their thoughts, and that in itself makes that other person wants to fight you back. I
Right.
mean, this has been years, I wouldn't say like deep study, but just realization. The more, and I've gotten in so many different arguments with so many people, but it's just a realization over time that, that this is what worked for me, is that, I can't just tell people what to do, or what to think based on what I've researched, even if I've researched it for 30 years, and even if they have 5 minutes of research of it. You cannot just come out and say that. Communication is a big deal, and it's just really, really tough to communicate your thoughts and your beliefs to somebody else that has just no idea what you've been through, and me as well,
Same
if I
same
don't
goes
know
for
what.
them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just my view on communication, though.
I think and we were kind of like glossing over it, but one thing is that sometimes people, they're looking at the same thing, but this person, you say like different points of view, and that's what it is. This person comes from this angle, and you come from like this angle, and you guys are still looking at the same thing. It's just you're looking at it from different perspectives, and sometimes what the hard thing is that the terms and the words and the ideas that we use to describe that same thing in the middle can vary, and because we don't know the different word sets to describe that from the different perspectives, then we can't understand someone. So like they would have to understand your whole perspective and where you're coming from and all those words to describe it. Just like if you're a Muslim and you're talking to a Christian, and you have different rule sets and different ideas of like creation and whatnot. But if you really get down to it, like they're very, 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 very similar. I mean, they're Abrahamic for sure, but um, it's the different use of language and how the what the words are talking about. And unfortunately, people are kind of trapped in this in their own bubble because they use words a certain way and they don't realize that people are using them in different ways, because they don't look for it. I, I I kind of came to it where I I started to notice there were subtle errors in it. So now I constantly look for it. When I talk to someone, I'm constantly looking for where or what word did I use that might have been misconstrued in their. And so I'll go through, and sometimes people will say, "Hey, quit talking to me like I'm dumb." And it's not that I'm talking to them like they're dumb or not. I'm trying to break down where's the error in communication and trying to fix it, not try to like degrade anyone. It's all about me trying to find uh, where is the communication not free flowing, because obviously there's a misunderstanding here, and
Yeah,
and and like and it sucks because yeah, sometimes people will take it the wrong way, and because I'm trying to explore, I'll say, what do you think I meant by this word? And they'll be like, I know what that word means. What do you think, I'm stupid? And it's like, no, I don't think you're stupid. I just need you to tell me.
what it means to you.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out if there's an error. And then I'll be like, this is what I meant by the word. And then a lot of times I'll also get, what do you think, I'm stupid? I know what that word means. I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to clarify it,
yeah,
and it's not in in an attacking way, because most of the time I say 99% of the time, because I used to like to argue just like you did, but 99% of the time I'm just trying to get to understanding between both people involved,
yeah,
and it's just a matter of being able to not get hung up over things like, hey, this is what I mean by this word, just so you know.
Yeah. And I realized that, by the way, for like a good year or two, you used to always ask me whenever we'd get into like little things like, what do you think this meant? And at the beginning, like maybe when you asked me like the first time, I'm like, does he think I'm stupid? But then I'm like,
Yeah.
but then when you kept doing it, I realized that on my own, like real quick. I'm like, oh, he's trying to see where I'm coming from
Yeah.
and how what I think about it. Because obviously, like especially like coming from a different language. I mean, I learned Arabic first, French second, and then I came to the United States. So I came from looking at things in three different languages, and so you realize thinking in English is different than thinking in Arabic. Like the way we word things can mean something completely different, and the way we grew up. I mean, we say things to each other that if you listen to them, if I translate them to English, you would just be on the floor crying and laughing, like you're like, what? like this is stupid. But it makes a lot of sense to us. It makes no sense to anybody else and to any other language. So you're not just taking a communication trying to understand words. Now you're also going back to his culture, his language, how he learned these words. What does he think about it? Not only that, like there's also different ways of especially in the Arabic culture, man. There's this everybody is all for their image, which I can't stand. I mean, this is something that I live by, not giving a crap about. Is living by people's image. Everybody wants their kid to be number one. Everybody wants to show that they are doing great, to show that they are super successful.
Sure.
Especially, even even the parents, they all want to show that their kids are the best, are this and that, and you have no idea how limiting that is when when you put your picture, when you put your image, and all you care about is your reputation and your image. It really limits people's hardcore. Like when you're like, for example, like I rarely see, for example, Lebanese people that go live on Facebook, but I see Americans going live left and right. You know, but I know, I mean, Lebanese people will never admit this, but I know it's more image. They don't want to show others that a different look or a different perspective. To me, I don't give two shits what people think about me, and that's my secret to being happy. But it's not that way, and I understand why, and it's not that way for the Lebanese culture or the Arabic culture in general.
I think a lot of
So I
cultures are that
understand
way.
what.
I think a lot of cultures, there's certain people that feel that way. I think that pervades all
And I
cultures.
agree. Yeah, there's a lot of Americans that feel that way as well. But I'm talking about like more in general. Like we care more about our image a lot more than you would think. I mean, people go dressed up top to bottom, going to church like it's a wedding. There's things that we do that are just silly. And when they're looked at from another perspective or from another culture, so there's an image part, and that image part really limits everything. If you think about, like, if you're sitting here and care, and you care about what people think about you, and you mean this very well. If you're sitting here and you care, and all you care about is what does this person think about me, I want to work hard and I want to show that I'm very successful. I want to dress up really nice everywhere I go. I want to have the nicest car. What do you think that does to your mind?
Right.
that that alone, all this stuff, what does it do to your mind, in your opinion?
Well, I think if you're concerned with your image, then you're going to try to, well, I mean, there's a lot of different variables, but so if you're worried about this particular person and how they view you, you're going to try to cater yourself to act a certain way to gain their acceptance, and in that way,
Exactly.
they control you. But really, um, do they really even control you? Because it's in your head, the model of how you're supposed to act. So you're
Exactly.
acting how you think they want you to act, which is like this double layer of like, what the hell are you doing? Because and it's like, how can you even function in that way? And then the whole time, it's like, to me, it would be very uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. You hit it right on the bell, man. It's exactly that. You're being who somebody else wants you to be.
Right.
and it's all in your freaking head.
It's
I mean,
all
it's simple. It's you could not have described it any better, because that's the truth of the matter, And it's tough, man. I mean, going back to communication, what we were talking about in general. I mean, that limits, if your mind is limited to that, that limits you in so many different ways as well, because now you're fighting how you should be. Whenever you talk about anything in general to any person, you have, because of you know of this image that you have of how you should be, how you should act, how you should do things, because of what others want you to do.
or more so, better put, more how you think others want you to be, which is like a double
Yeah,
a
how you
double
think. I mean,
filter.
it's literally, almost to me at least, it's living a lie. And once I realized this, and I realized this, a long time ago, but once I realized this, I stopped, man. I could not be fake, and that's one of the reasons, to be honest with you, why I butt heads a lot with a lot of good friends of mine. It's because I can't, I mean, I'm not saying they care so much about that, but I just don't. When you don't care, and excuse my language when I say, like, I'm just don't give a shit, because I don't. I got to a point in life where, talking to my friends, and I love all my friends, man. I mean, I've grew up with all my friends, whether they're here, Lebanon, this and that. But I got to a point right now when you bullshit me, I don't take it lightly. Like, I don't take it lightly, and maybe it's something within me as well. But I want nothing but real people in my life. So when people
Authenticity.
authenticity, correct. So when somebody lies or bullshits me, this and that, and it's a bad habit of mine, but I attack them in a way where, I'm like, hey, I call it out. And so, because obviously I call out that bullshit, they're not going to be happy. They attack me back, and then it becomes an argument. But I've learned in life, man, like, hey, I would rather have a few really, really good friends, rather than having 30, 40 friends that, most of them are fake to me, and then I have to see them all the time, being that way.
So with
So
that being said, when you say you'd rather have a certain amount of friends, well, so I've had issues with this with certain friend groups. Like people they'll put each other down, right? So what they'll sit there and it'll start off joking, but then it'll be relentless, and then it'll be consistent, and it's like it gets to the point when um, you're like, hey, these things that you're saying, they're not necessarily the most beneficial for our relationship and communication, because people will maybe will get a little passive aggressive and hold some hostility towards the person, because they kept bringing up things and like really railing you, because we're taught in the American culture, guys, if they're really good friends, they put each other down. But is that really a thing? I don't necessarily think it's a thing, and I think in fact it can cause major issues with properly being able to communicate with someone. So like
yeah,
how do you handle like a situation with that? Because that, to me, is something that I always struggled with people, where you go around and it's like, I thought friends are supposed to build each other up, not break them down. And
yeah,
there's a lot of people that are kind of like culture, kind of like, or just their environment growing up, like that's kind of, they learned that almost like, I always relate it like this, and I'm not trying to put people down, but to me it's like monkeys throwing shit at each other. And you know what I'm saying? When I go out with my friends, and like say they're talking to girls or whatever, I'll go around and I will make them look like the coolest thing around. I'll make them look like a movie star. And so, I mean, I kind of went off on a tangent, but like,
yeah.
so when you're
No,
talking
that
about
makes
those
sense.
close friends, like, can you still have those close friends when they're also playing those social games with you and like putting you down? Like, how do you respond to that?
Yeah. Oh, it's tough, man. I mean, I could talk about that probably for hours, because really, when I'm in I have two groups of friends that I usually hang out with, here, and then in Lebanon as well when I go down there, and they're really the same. I mean, that I can't really um you know say, oh, this group is better than that group. But the ones in Lebanon actually show a little bit more compassion. They actually show that. But they're both Lebanese here and there. So to me, I'm still trying to understand, why is the group that I hang out with in Lebanon, or there, I'll give an example. We both have chats. For example, we both have both a group in Lebanon and a group here. We both have WhatsApp chat groups, and I
Mhm.
talk to both of them. And one of them, all they do is talk positive, like literally, like you would think, like, man, it's nothing but a happy group. And then the other one, uh, all it is literally ripping on each other, putting each other down. Like nobody can do anything without the next person like puts them down. I mean, you can't even share a funny fucking video without somebody ripping on it and saying that's stupid. So it is joking. It is joking, and we get that. But there's also, to me at least, there's also a line to be drawn when that happens because I don't know, um, you know, like exactly like you said, like how do you bring and talk seriously to any of the group? Now here's the thing: when I talk to any of them separately, they're completely different. And I can talk to any of them like we're best friends separately on that group. But I go into that group and I can't talk to anybody. And it's all just bashing, putting each other down,
What do you
smacking
think
each
of the
other left and right.
dynamics that causes that? And
So why would you? What I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think triggers that? Like, why do you think that is it building off each other? Do people feel good about putting others down? What makes you feel like? What do you feel like in your view?
um, I think to some extent, when you get really, 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 really comfortable with someone, there's kind of like that. They'll be real with you, right? And there's a difference between being real and then like putting someone down. And I think what happens is we get so comfortable with people that these things start to slip out, and maybe it's like a group think. You know, I I have different groups of friends, and like the the social atmosphere between those different groups all has its own different flavor, right?
Yeah,
And um, there's older friends where like they'll put each other down, but I mean I remember like whenever I got into like self development and reading all the books and psychology and and whatnot, I got to the point where I looked at them like, hey, I know they're joking or so they say, but they're saying these things. Do they know? And I started to tell these people, I'm like, I don't think this is cool that we're doing this. I mean, I don't you think we like should support each other more instead of like playing around and making these games? And
yeah,
I actually had some blowouts with groups of people being like, dude, you changed. Like they didn't like it because I was like, I brought to the table, I was very direct to them. I'm very direct. And I brought it like, hey, I don't think this is beneficial because I think some of this, it gets borderline, you know, destructive to each other. Sarcasm, which is a thing I also struggle with, is sometimes sarcasm is okay, but if you look up the word, it literally means to cut. And like if you're playing with your friends like that and you're cutting at them, like is that communication positive? And then what are the ramifications? I think a lot of the playfulness it's like kind of you're conditioned to kind of play like that. That's like what we're taught. Guys rip on each other, but I also think it's you get so close to someone and then you let things slide and then they go overboard. And I also think it's a lack of people reflecting and being like, hey, why did I say that? Maybe that hurt their feelings, or maybe that affected them in a negative way, and
yeah,
maybe I shouldn't play so much, because that's what it is. It's playing, right? And so when you play, things can get screwed up, especially like as you grow older and you become an adult,
yeah.
and you have when you're a boy you do boyish things, when you're an adult you grow up and you become do communicate like an adult. And yeah, I mean I'm sure it's different for everyone, but I think the group has like I said, has a certain flavor of how they interact. It depends on the group. Like you said, you've experienced two different groups. This one's super positive and whatnot, and this one might be like a little bit more. We, instead of saying it in a negative sense, of that classic American style camaraderie, right? But
Yeah.
I think there are definitely components of it where it can get toxic for sure.
Do you think it's they build up on that? They build up on it because they're in that group. Because like
Like
like I
feed
said,
off each
it's
other.
they feed off each other. Yeah, because it's like I said, I talk to them separately in a group, and they're different. But then in the chat and separately they're different. Than in a group, they're much different. But it, also, even the way they say things, even though it's texting, like it seems like they're also trying. There's like truth to it, because even if you're ripping on people, there's always like a hair of truth to it, whether it's 5%, 10%, or 90%. There's always a hair of truth. I mean, you don't rip on somebody without there being, like, unless it's like a complete joke and you both understand it, then you both laugh at it, and you
Right,
should laugh
right,
at
right,
it.
right.
But when one's not laughing at it, then there should be, that should be understood, that there's some kind of truth to it, whether it's one person, um you
It's
know
like
uh,
veiled.
yeah, whether it's one person feels it more than the other, and that's when that other person, that's when it's realized by one of those people, and that's when usually, like, people start, butting heads with that equation, but yeah, man, I mean, it's definitely, it's tough to tell people, hey, you might be saying, can you change that. You definitely
I'm in
cannot
the
say
middle
it
of a
say it in that
podcast.
group. You definitely cannot
I'm in the
say it in
middle
the
of a
group,
podcast.
but you have to say it, separately, just to make them understand it. But you definitely can't say it in the group, because then you got like 90 people right on your back. It's like, oh, you can't take a joke, this and that, And it's not necessarily that. It's just, to me at least, it's, you have to communicate this in the right way. But and I could be, listen, I could be completely wrong about this, especially because it is a group chat, it is all boys, it could be all messing around, and it might be 100% just messing around, and some of us taking it a little bit harder than the rest,
Right.
because it's funny, every time I'm in that group, somebody leaves, somebody ends
Oh,
up
really?
leaving after, oh yeah, after like every big argument, somebody ends up leaving the group, and then we all come back to the group. So it's kind of a funny situation
Cycles of
that happens.
destruction. No,
It
you
is,
know,
it is.
I've
So
I've had very similar experiences. So when I'm pretty, I'm pretty outspoken, and there's very often I'll go into a certain group, and if I see people putting people each other down in like some sort of negative way, and like, and it's not, if they're playing around, and as long as everyone is with good spirits, that's one thing. Now if I see someone saying something to someone else and I know it's getting under their skin, I'll be like, hey, do you think right now that's like the most positive thing? Do you think right now that's the most beneficial? Like, you probably are causing them some sort of internal turmoil. It might not be
yeah,
the best, and I'll call people out on their shit whenever they, might be, and I'm not trying to be like some sort of like I'm without fucking fault. That's not what, because we can all, we've all gone to that thing where you start joking and you start going down that path, and then whoops, I hit you below the belt, right? and
yes, there
and,
you
and you and
go.
that's what, like, people, yeah, and it can be destructive. Sometimes maybe playing around is to maybe make people not so serious about some of the issues they have, right? They make
Yeah,
fun of it, make a light of it, but sometimes it really stings that other person, and I don't know, it's a, when you get in with groups of people, man, it can just go down a really toxic place.
it is. It is tough, man. And that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, like, I try as much as I can to avoid being in the, especially in the boys group. And I love them all, man. All separately, I talk to them all, and everything is all great. But when we're in the group, it's just such a toxic environment that I feel like if I meditated that morning, or if I'm feeling good that day, it just kills my entire day. The entire rest of the day, I'm like, man, that was such a waste. And sometimes you spend that entire day replying to messages to prove your point, and then in the back of my mind, here's what's funny about this. In the back of my mind, I'm always realizing that I'm texting, the shittiest form of communication you can have, and I'm trying to make some, some of the most stubborn people understand a point in text. So that's when I
Yeah.
realized later, all right, I gotta stop, and I always get to that point where, like, okay, I gotta stop, because it's obviously not gonna go anywhere. We're all stubborn, and it's not gonna, but when I talk to them separately, we always understand each other,
Yeah.
uh, you know, and that's the thing. But I wanted to say something, actually. My wife actually posted on the video while we're talking. She said, as a society, we're used to putting each other down in order for us to feel better about ourselves. In some cases, that's when that person is not happy or struggling in life. And
Right.
that's actually a very, very good point,
No, she's right.
because,
I think that's a
yeah,
good
and
factor.
I know that I've done this when I was struggling, and I know I've seen my own friends done it when they're struggling, and for the longest time, I wouldn't point that out, or realize that. I'm sorry, I wouldn't really realize this until later on, when I realized, like, oh shit, they were struggling. And that's a good point, man, because sometimes communication, even without our intention, can hurt others because we don't know what they're going through. We don't. And you know, sometimes it's personal and you don't, you know, I mean, you know what, you know, we've gone through. And uh you know, not always did I tell people what, you know, I've gone through, whether it's with my wife, with you, with other people. And nobody knows what anybody is going through in life. I've known half my friends struggled a lot, and every one of those situations is completely different than the next. And you don't know when that struggle hits the top, and then you're trying to communicate, like, or trying to get them to understand something when they're at the worst of their struggle. All they're going to be caring about to do is put you down, you
Right.
know. And it's not, sometimes it's not really their fault. It's just there's emotions boiling along with that communication. And so when you talk to them at that worst point, you know, of their life, or one of the worst points of their life, you're gonna have to add, you know, emotions to that that you may not know about.
Right.
You know, now if you know about it, then
Communication.
it can help you communicate a little bit better. And so when I started to understand, when what my struggles of some of my friends and some of my families were, I started to act different. Now, not fake different. I started to act with in the back of my mind, knowing what they've
Awareness.
gone through, so I know how to communicate things. So I'm not saying the wrong word. And that I think, to me at least, is very important in communication, and communicating the right way, the right at the right time. Sometimes that is a big deal. You know, you can't just go talk to somebody that, you know, got hurt in some way right after they got hurt in that way. You know, sometimes you need to just let them cool down, and then talk to them on that. But real quick, I just wanted to say hi, hi Amto. It's my aunt saying hi from Australia. I just
Australia.
wanted to say hi. Yeah, she's
Down
watching
under.
right now. But I love you, mom. My mom's watching as well. Anyways, so that's my perspective on those you know, levels of communication. So it's not just the limitation of how you communicate these things, and your facial expression, along with what words you use that you've grown to understand differently than the words that other people have grown to understand, you know, in their language, maybe. You know, then you need to also understand, what are they also going through right now in life? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they struggling? I mean, it's a big subject, man. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a big
communication's hard.
communication is not easy at all. So, I mean, this is the subject, we love talking about, and we've talked about a lot in the past. Obviously, not live on Facebook, but it's such a big deal, and it's what allowed us to grow. It's our understanding of communication to each other, is what allowed us to grow and become better friends with each other. You know, obviously, for those who don't know, you know, Chris lives in St. Louis. I live here. I've seen him twice, maybe in my life, twice or three times, you know, in my life. And I've known you for nearly 20 years, you know. And so,
Oh man.
or
Oh
15 years
man.
or something like that. But we've grown to be, you know, very, very close friends. And we've grown a lot, you know, and that's one of the biggest subject, one of the biggest ways we've learned to grow is communication. We learned how to communicate better with each other. You know, we knew that talking on the phone is 10 times better than, you know, texting, because
Call
we've
me right now. I need to explain this to you because it's not working on the texting you.
but we've done that, and we've done that, and that's the kind of cool, you know, relationship we had, is that sometimes when we were getting in arguments, we would call each other. We would stop and call each other and be like, listen, this is what I'm trying to say, you know, instead of reading it, because reading it, you're gonna think of how you would say it,
Yeah,
not
there's
how that other person you would
so
say it.
much context lacking whenever you just text. There's
Yeah,
so much
so
context.
communication is very hard on so many levels to have. So, you know, that's something where, you know, people shouldn't feel, you know, too bad about, getting in arguments with people or getting in fights with people. And this is a good point that, you know, my when my wife made that comment about, you know, people are struggling, and that's why they put each other down. You know, my friends who are actually the doing the best, they are the most positive, and they are always pushing me up, even in groups. Good job, man. Good way to go. I hope you do this. Let me know if you need help marketing. Post, like, they'll be giving me hints and this and that. That's how you know, like, people are just a different level. So whenever somebody's putting me down a lot, sometimes, like, I'll get away from it, because I don't know what they're
Straining,
going
man.
through. I don't know what they're going through, and I don't know if me talking to them more and more is gonna be triggering that more and more, and it's gonna end up hurting our friendship. So sometimes getting away from that friendship is actually the healthy thing to do,
Right.
because you honestly don't know, what the best thing to do, or the best thing to say to that person, to help, help them understand what you're trying to say, and you may not understand it because they don't want to tell you what they're going through. So then it makes it very hard for you to communicate. And sometimes the best, I'm like, okay, you know what, they don't want to tell me whatever they want to tell me, and they're not comfortable maybe right now tell me what they want to tell me. So I'm gonna step back, and I can come back a week or later or a month later and try it again, because I care, and I want to talk to my friend, and I want this friendship to work. So it is tough, man. It is tough, and I don't know how you can relate to it from what you've been through in life, man. But I mean, I've been through it, ups and downs, through mountains, with friends, with family, and it's all communication. I know that I can't talk to my dad like I can talk to my mom or my wife. My dad doesn't understand things the same way my mom understands it. So when I talk to my dad, I speak in a certain tone, in a certain way. When I speak to my mom, I speak in a certain way. When I speak to my brother, I speak in a certain way. When I speak to you, I speak in a certain way.
Hmm.
You have to do that
You're
to,
meeting him
to
in the
help.
middle.
Yeah, you have to. Now, of course, I'm switching the way that I'm talking, but that doesn't mean I'm fake. I just learned what's the best way to communicate with different people. It doesn't mean that I'm switching how
So
I'm
how
communicating.
does that so that's interesting. So how does that differ from when you were talking about communication and acting a certain way so they like you? Is it the intent? Is it the intent?
Correct. Yes.
So you, so
So,
so what's the difference in the intent?
well, the intent, if you're, I mean, if you're talking and trying to do something, if you're trying to say something to people that to try to get them to react to it in a certain way, that's an intent. So that's not the right way to that's not the right way to grow in life. That's not the right way to communicate and understand your friend. That to me is 100% fake. And I used to do that. Trust me, I used to speak in ways that with my intention to try to get them to switch the way they're thinking. Now, not all intent, to me at least, now all intent is bad, because sometimes I would switch the way that I'm speaking in an intent for them to try to understand my point of view, or try to get them to think a little differently. So I guess it's just, what is your intent with that communication? Does that make sense?
Well,
So
yeah, I think what you're trying to get at is it's an intent between trying to make someone like you versus the intent to how can I get this communicated to this
message.
person as
Yes,
as effectively as possible.
exactly. So that's my point of it. And it's hard, man. It is hard, to try to understand how everybody thinks. Everybody is different. I mean, the way that I talk to each of my friends is different. I had to learn to speak to each of my friends, each of my family members, each of my even my wife, everybody differently, in a way that I can understand them and they can understand me best. And once I start butting heads with one of them, that's when I know I don't quite know them yet. I don't I don't know them well enough to know, because if I'm still arguing with somebody that I've known for 20 years, either like we talked about, they're struggling, or I'm struggling, or they're going through something, I'm going through something, I'm not in the right state to talk, they're not in the right state to talk, or our views are just viewed, coming from two different cultures, or two different, very different backgrounds. So that's when we should step back and realize, hey, either I need to stop talking, or I need to stop communicating right now and come back later, or I need to switch the way that I'm speaking, so that we can understand each other a little bit better, in a little different way. So I don't know if that's making any sense to you,
No,
but
no, I get it. I mean, it's good when you're when people when people are mostly excited in any situation. that emotion's gonna kind of like misconstrue the communication coming in anyway. So you got, I mean, everyone's gotten a fight with like their spouse or with a close friend or whatever. You gotta let yourself calm down for you to be able to like communicate without any emotion affecting it.
Here's a question for you. When do you think you need to stop during maybe an argument or during a communication that you're having with somebody that's not going very well?
I don't know,
What?
man. I still struggle with that all the time. I will just I will go because and everyone's like, you're just trying to prove a point. I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm very, very, very adamant of having understanding happen between this person and me or whatever. And when and it's something that like gets to the my core whenever I can't have like my concept or their concept and it's communicated clearly it, and it's not just me. I want to hear what someone's saying, and I will like pick at them and ask them questions. And people always take it the wrong way. It's always coming from a perspective of I just want there to be understanding happening.
Yeah.
I don't know like if
But I'm sure it's gotten to a line. I'm sure it's gotten to a point when in the past for you where you get to a point it's not going right. When do you say okay, all right?
when
When do you at least not just say like okay and pissed off and shut off? I'm talking about when you actually realize that the communication, like you're conscious about the communication not going well, and you step back and say, hey, you don't necessarily tell them. I'm just talking about you internally. When when do you stop and say, or have you done that in the past where you stop and be like, all right, he's not understanding it, or maybe something is not, maybe I'm not communicating it right, and you step back. Like, do you wait until they get angry? Do you wait until you're getting angry? Because I mean this is something that I've struggled with in my in my past and before, is realizing when that point is.
right.
And
Well,
sometimes go ahead, I'll let
I,
you
I I would say ideally it's whenever I would say ideally it's whenever you notice you are getting emotionally excited or they're getting emotionally excited, because as soon as that happens communication is like nope. And there's been times and I've been in relationships where I know that we are both upset, and for a communication to try to continue at all is a futile attempt, and I need to walk away and let things die down, and then you come back, and then when you're cooled down you can get things across. And a lot of times in my relationships, especially with significant others, you know the emotion made the thing so much more intense than it needed to be, that once it was gone, then actual communication could happen.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a struggle, man. I mean, it's but and I definitely do not realize this all the time, because sometimes I'll get into the emotions as well, and I'll get emotionally excited, and then I'll let that drag, and I don't realize it until the communication is done, and it didn't go anywhere, and then I realize it later. Now, what's funny is that I always realize it, not necessarily at the time, and that's what I try to do. I try very hard to do, and it's not easy, especially when you're getting into a heated argument with somebody. It's not easy to stop and realize and be conscious that both of us are heated, both of us are excited, and especially yourself is excited and need to step back. It's not very easy to do that. Now, I've been able to do that a few times, and I've also not been able to do that a lot more than a few times. So, but I'll always step back, and that's why, like you said, sometimes you need to step back and allow yourself to rest, emotionally rest, and and collect yourself, and then come back and talk to the person. Sometimes that can be in a day. Now, I'm proud that I'm able to sometimes come back in the same day or the next day and be able to realize it and come back to that communication and finish it, but it's not always that way. Sometimes it's taken me months to be able to do that. That I can, give that example to you when we stopped speaking for a good 6 or 7 months.
Which time?
Yeah, but I mean, how many times have we both gotten into communication arguments communication issues, not understanding, and then we come back and we're like brothers again. I mean,
Right.
it's but because that's because we realize it. We realize that we talk to each other. We say dumb shit when we're excited, and it's always the same case. Whenever we are overly excited, we talk out of our ass, and we know what triggers us. I know what triggers you. You know what triggers me. So, and when you know a person too well, sometimes that's a very bad thing. What's up, Misho? I know my cousin is saying he gets excited when he sees me. so, so it's I was gonna say about that. So it's a very hard struggle, but the best thing that happens, I realize at least I'm at the best at this when I meditate.
Yeah.
Whenever I meditate that day, I feel like I am the best at realizing or being conscious of me doing or saying dumb shit
You're in the
while I'm
moment.
saying it.
You're in the
Sometimes
moment.
it's after I say it. Sometimes I catch myself right before I say it, and sometimes it's way after I say it. But like it's the best right after meditation. That's when if I have good conversations, then I can then if I have good meditation, then I have really good conversations with people, and I allow myself to understand them a little bit better. Hi, Tont Ferial. So I'm just replying to some people that are some of my family and friends that are commenting. And then my mom is saying we need to understand, communicate with people, and take them the way they are, which is a very good point too. And that's what we talked about is being able to understand the other person, because unless you know that entire history of how that person thinks, what culture they've come from, what are they going through in life at that moment. Obviously I can't say the same things to a person that some other their dad just passed away or something like that. You don't go joke around with them. You don't say the same things. You don't go get in arguments with them. No, you let them win arguments on purpose. So that's a struggle. That's a struggle, but that's a very good point. It's the whole talk here is all about communication and how do we communicate? How do we communicate effectively, and to everybody? And it's the biggest thing that I come out with from all this is that it's a non-stop learning thing that you're gonna. It's not easy, and it's definitely a struggle to communicate with everybody effectively. And those who do it at the top levels, those are, to me at least, those are some of the most successful people. Those people can sell a rock, for $1 million. Like those people that know how to talk are some of the best salespeople in the world, some of the best CEOs in the world, because they know how to, what is sales? I mean,
It's
it's all,
communication.
it's communication, being able to read that person, know what they're looking for from their facial expressions, being able to realize what they like and don't like, and then let them listen to what they like to hear. Now that I,
It's
I wouldn't
a
say
little
that's a
manipulative, though. It's
exactly.
little
That's what I'm
manipulative.
saying. So that's what I'm getting to. It. I wouldn't say that's a in a positive communication method, but those guys do understand communication very well. Whether they use it for the good or for the bad, that's up to them. But those guys, especially those top sales guys, people that know how to sell everything and its mom, they know communication top to bottom, and they know facial expressions. They know how to read people. And how hard is that? I mean, think about it. You go meet somebody. How do you know that person wants to buy something? How do you make them switch to buy something? You really have to read their facial expression, their words, the way they sit, the way they put their hand on the table. That's tough, and then you look at us and we're like, oh, well, we're having issues communication. Yeah, that's because we suck at it, and we need to get better at it, and we need to. Oh, it's harsh to say we suck at it, but I'm just saying we're not. We have a lot to learn, and nobody can come out and say I'm the best communicator. I'm perfect at communication,
Yeah,
because nobody knows everybody.
I would say that sales is a certain type of communication, and yeah, they're very efficient at communicating to be able to um, convey certain words or language to get a person to ultimately buy. Um, I they're great at communicating in a sense, but I think there's different ways to communicate. So I do tech support, and I communicate with people all the time, all over the country, right? And I will actually someone will be so I almost really enjoy it. I think I enjoy it. Someone will call and they will be very upset with the technical troubleshooting or the technical issues they're having, and I make it a point to go in and through control of myself and my emotions and how I'm speaking to completely like knock that off, like they like where they're because they don't know me from anything, so they don't have any history, they don't have any like, oh, he's trying to do this or
Yep.
that, and it I find great because I will hang up the phone and I will have these people laughing, like I'm talking about in a very government, like these people, my company, all contract, it's all government, and these people work for the government. It's very serious situations, and I will have these
Yeah.
people cracking up when I get off the phone with them. I try it every single time,
Yeah.
and that's just understanding different things I know about myself. It
Secrets of
really, what
laughter.
the secrets of laughter? Well, it's so fun. It's so fun to make someone laugh when they're in a super, serious,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and they're like, "What? We're laughing now? Like we're allowed to? Yep, we were allowed to laugh."
This is a really good point about that, because here's what's funny. And I'm an engineer. Obviously, I've been an engineer my entire career. I've never, the only sales I've been in part of is my business that I have on the side that I do. But that's really online. I'm not dealing with customers. I talk to them on the phone, but not much. I don't have the sales pitch. I don't know how to sell things very well. So um, but in the last job that I've had, I used to go out to demo my machine that I built. So I built this machine. I went to Amazon, to Target, to these big companies, Fuji, and I was demoing this machine. Now the sales guy went with me, but when I started talking, they wouldn't say anything. And to me, I got scared a little bit. I'm like, what the heck? They're not like when they don't talk. I feel like I need to talk because it's my machine, and I don't want not to sell my machine. So I need to tell them all about the machine, this and that. But I'd realize that the sales guys are so freaking serious. Like they're like, oh yeah, 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 but this machine can do this and this is it. And so I'm like, and I'm like, they're like, don't worry about it, guys. I'm like, hey, this machine, the first version I built blew up twice actually. And I'll tell them this and they'll laugh. And the sales guy's like, what are you telling them, man? Like, you can't tell them the machine blew up. And I'm like, it's okay, man. It's the previous version. Who cares? We didn't bring in the previous version. And then these guys just open up. Like, they're like, oh, man. He's like, this is not going to blow up on me. I'm like, if it did, hey, take a video and send it to me so I can see what happened.
Yes,
So
yes.
I joke. And like after the second company that I went to, I'm real, dude, I sold it to the first two companies. Like it was like an $8 million job. And I sold it to the first two companies without the sales guy putting in more than 10 words. And they would come back and tell my boss, like, hey, you need to get this guy in sales. And I'd go to my boss, I'm like, no, don't. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. He's like, all I'm doing is being honest with them and making them laugh. And
But
he
that's the
goes,
best sales.
and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, it worked, and maybe I was lucky and it worked for those two companies, but it worked for those two clients. But I think what they saw is honesty and down to earth. I didn't care to try to show them that this machine is flawless. I even told them, listen, I have issues here. Yeah, you guys might have some issues when you're trying to put these bags onto the rail, onto the machine. If this gets stuck, just do this and they'll fix it. Dude, I was literally pointing out all the issues. And the sales guy is like, you stop. You can't tell him that this guy, tell him the good stuff. I'm like, the good stuff. Oh, you just have to put it in and press a button. That's all. That's easy. He's like, I gotta tell him what happens if it goes wrong, because you know what? I've been on the other side of that. I've been on the other side of buying machines that are shitty, and I gotta sit and try to fix these machines because they're shitty. And all I was told from these manufacturers that the machine is perfect and it never goes bad and needs maintenance once a year. and it's got 12 months before it goes back. And within like the first 2 days, the machine is already down. So I learned that, hey, if I'm selling something to them, I want to be able to buy it. If I'm not willing to buy it, then I cannot do that. And you know what? I need honesty. And with honesty comes laughter and everything in between. And I found out that if I can't be friends with these people that I'm supplying these machines that I've designed and built, then I cannot sell them these machines. I morally didn't feel right telling them about something about a machine. Like, there was faults in the machine. It was a beta version. I needed to tell them, hey, these are beta versions. There are issues, and you're gonna find these issues. But here's what you do to fix them. If you have issues, here's my direct number. I'm the engineer. I designed this. I'll help you guys fix it. And so I learned quickly, man, that laughter is such a hardcore thing in communication, man. Such a big part of communication that no matter what, you can easily allow people to open up to you more if you make them laugh. And they will buy from you if you make them laugh. They will, they will tell you what they're feeling if they didn't want to tell you, if you make them laugh. And not only that, relate to them as well. Not
Yeah.
only in laughter, like in sadness, like say they're feeling something, and you've excuse me, you've had it happen to you before. You can easily, give them an example like, oh man, I've had this same thing happen to me, man, and I've done this, I've this, and man, it's tough. And so relating to that person, at least to me, is also a big part of that communication. I don't know how, if you've ever used that as well, but I've realized it as well. Whenever I relate to people about things that I'm going through, that I mean, that's an obvious thing, but it opens up communication to be a little bit better between you and that person.
Rapport.
And it opens up because once you start going in communication and communicating with anybody, once you start going towards that road where, but I did this, and but you didn't do that, but look at this, that's when you're both trying to prove a point. It's very hard to go back from that. So it's very important, man, even early on in communication, to try to word things in a way to not look like you're attacking. Because as soon as they feel attacked, that's it. That's it. You're not gonna get them to understand, or it's very hard. There's very few people that will come back and do that, but that's very few. I mean, I've met maybe two people in my life that I've like kind of put down in a way, and they've come back and tell me, "Oh, you might be right," in the same conversation.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
that's a very few people that are very, very mature, very conscious people that are very rare in between. But for the most of us, and me included, it's very tough to find those kind of people. And because of that, you need to learn how to move towards a communication, move towards a talk with anybody, especially if they come at you in a way where their thought process is completely different. Like if I post something on anti-vax and they come out and say, "What are you talking about? This has been tested. This is the test right here." Then instead of me saying, "Oh shit, I'm gonna send them 157 studies," boom, show them what it's about. No,
I've
that's
been on
not
the
what it's about.
receiving end of that, by the way.
Yeah, by me, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's the kind, like, you need to first take the time. If I want you to read, if you send me one study proving that vaccines work, for example, and I send you 157 studies right away, would you honestly sit around and even read one of those studies when you know damn well that I didn't read your one study, in that 5 seconds that you sent it to me? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Going back, going back to all the way to the sales stuff. I think, yeah, you say things in a certain way, but I think at the end of the day, I serve people with communication the best when I'm authentic. I think people innately, and I've read books that statistically say that our intuition that we get, the flashes of insights, our emotional tone that we get on other people is is the best and most accurate way that you can actually use intuition. And one of the things is telling if someone's being authentic or not.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. Um, No, man. I mean, it's a subject, dude, that we can sit here and discuss literally, man, like for hours and hours, because there's an art to communication, and you know it. That's why there's books on it. That's why the CIA trains their operatives on it, man.
CIA
Uh,
stuff again.
what?
It's the CIA stuff because you because you've been
It's
involved
true.
in the
Not just the
CIA.
CIA, FBI, everybody, man. Like all the government. This is they know all about that. That's why they need to see people's facial expressions when they talk to them, when they see them, when they interrogate them. It's such an important thing. Even if you're in court, it's such an important thing, man. To look at a person's face. Like to me, at least, I don't know what the best form of communication for you it is, but for me, it's not even over the phone. It's not even over video. I need to be right in front of you. Like that to me, if I need to communicate something best with somebody, that's to me is hands down the best and only way to do it. I want to see what are you doing with your foot when you're communicating with me? What are you doing? Because if you're sitting here tapping your foot, then I know that you're getting aggravated. You want to switch the subject, or you want to get the hell out of there. You know what I mean? Like it's those are things that make a big difference. If I know that you're aggravated about what I'm saying, I need to switch the way that I'm saying things to be able to communicate a little bit better to you. But
Right.
if I'm on the phone, you don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not wearing pants right now. You don't know it.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not either.
I'll show you. I'll show you after the stream.
I haven't.
but but yeah, man. I mean, it's to me at least that's the best form of communication. And but obviously we don't have the luxury of that, especially at a time like this. This is the best form of communication at a time like this, obviously. But like, and the world is moving more and more into this complete digital world. You don't be surprised if working is all from home for 50% of the people coming in the next 10 years. Where this is it. This is communication, man. This is it's the best you'll get from most of the people that are working. So we have to learn to be our best, from to use that to our best ability, and keep that conscious mind open. While we're communicating with others, that hey, it's not always about me. And that's my struggle. It's that I gotta stop thinking. I gotta stop thinking. I gotta convince them. It's not about me. What am I feeling at that time as well? If I start to feel agitated, I need to realize that I'm feeling agitated and step back. I don't need to tell that person, hey, hold on, I'm agitated. I'll be back. But hey, I'm feeling it. Okay, hold on. I gotta, take a breather. Communicate it. Maybe send the message an hour later, even though I received it right away. But that's just a way to realize things. I mean, this is just my overall view on communication, but obviously we can get into details and hours of talk on that.
I I would just say communication's everything. If you don't have communication, you don't have anything.
Yeah,
It's literally everything in life.
yeah.
And
Do you have any advice to people? Maybe is how to improve upon their communication.
oh man, I I try to I always I look at myself and I don't see the things that I've done. I see the things I still have left to do, especially in communication.
Yeah,
And um I can say that just like you, and this and it sounds so regurgitated, but people just have to try it. You got to do it. Once you do it, you'll see it. And, experiment. You can't knock it until you try it, and that's meditation. Like meditation puts you in a place to be able to communicate and do everything else in your life vastly better because you're more aware and you're more in the moment, and because you're like that and not operating off of some sort of programmed mechanism or habit, everything just comes alive and is better because of it.
yeah. No,
That,
I
that's
agree,
what
man.
I
I
would say.
agree. That's a really good subject, man. And I think we can even talk about it on another show maybe, and even getting in a lot more detail if we wanted to. But it's such a good subject because it's important. It's like you said, everything. It's all we do is communicate. That's how you. I mean, that's
It's
how the world works.
it's
It's all
everything.
connections and communication. So it's really important to study communication. Read books on it. There's a lot of information on YouTube, on Amazon Books. On communication, how to communicate the right way. To There's a lot of manipulative books as well, where you can manipulate people to 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 think in a certain way, or
Yeah,
to believe.
there's plenty of politicians that are into that.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not going
that
to name any names.
but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weapon that can be used, if you use it in a different way.
Yeah,
But to us, this is what's most important, is learning is how to get along with people, how to understand them and have them understand us without having that butting heads, even if we are from two different cultures. And
right.
that's but you're right, it is completely everything that we go through, and everything that we experience in life. It's part of everything that we experience in life. And I believe at least everybody needs to improve upon that, and realize that they need to improve upon that, to make to get along better in life, you know. So, but oh, good talk today, man. Good talk. So with that, unless you have something to add, we can
No, no, good
end the
talk.
talk.
Talk, man. Communication's awesome. Next time, I want to talk about paranormal stuff.
All right, we'll definitely do that next time. But thanks for everybody who was watching.
Yep.
I know a lot of people came on my channel, on my Facebook page. Oh wow, good, over maybe like 40, 50 people.
Wow.
So yeah, we had a good showing today. So hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and we'll be back.